From acclaimed filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki come 4 magical films filled with adventure and enchantment, each with its own special edition DVD.
I've always, and by always I mean since I was probably, 12, been fascinated by the fact that the original cuts of Star Wars are no longer being released. When I watch Star Wars, I prefer to watch it with minimal CGI flim-flam, so I either watch my VHS copies or Harmy's despecialized versions. But it's not like I saw any of them in theater, so there's no original experience that I'm trying to replicate. Hell, I watched them in numbered order, starting with Phantom Menace, so, well, you know, no experience I want to recreate there. The thing is, for me, the movies weren't the main draw of Star Wars as a franchise. I watched the movies, but I spent a way larger fraction of my childhood playing LEGO Star Wars and Star Wars Battlefront. So when people talk about the special editions, I'm strongly against them, but I don't have the right kind of emotional attachment to the originals to put me in the same position as somebody who's, you know, old. But now I get it. Now I've had the experience of watching a bastardized version of one of my all-time favorite movies. Because if you buy it on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever today, you may have noticed, like me, that there's something wrong with Kiki's delivery service. And it was not a nice feeling. Like, if somebody swapped your baby for an almost identical baby, except it's missing that one mole on its cheek, and you're like, this is not my baby. Where the frick did you put my baby? Kiki is a very special movie to me. It's easily my favorite Ghibli movie, and that's saying something. And, unlike a lot of people's favorite Ghibli movies, Kiki wasn't the first one I saw. My first was Princess Mononoke, and I remember how entranced I was by that as a little 6-year-old. I was all,
whoa, it's like cartoons, but with people getting their heads shot off with arrows!
And I sought out other ones like Spirited Away, and Totoro, and Nausicaa, and Kiki. And I can show you the exact scene, no, the exact second that I fell in love with this movie.
Hurry up! We always said that we'd leave on the perfect night, didn't we? Our plan was that we would stick around for another month and play it safe. I like that plan.
If you're familiar with this movie, you may have forgotten the initial experience of hearing a cat suddenly and casually begin talking, and for the voice that came out of that cat to be Phil Hartman's nasal, sarcastic backtalk.
I'm gonna put my paws together and pray you're not serious.
I couldn't stop laughing. I was giddy. I had to pause it and back it up and hear the cat say, "I like that plan," 10 or 12 more times. And needless to say, I loved the rest of the movie. It's kind of a testament to Miyazaki's skill as a storyteller that I loved it so much, because it's probably the most normal setting of any of the movies he directed. While movies like Ponyo and Spirited Away and Mononoke had normal characters going to a fantasy world, Kiki is about a fantasy character trying to fit in the normal world. Well, okay, there's a bit of crossover there with Ponyo and probably something else I'm forgetting, like Pompoko or whatever.
But my point is, in creating a perspective like this where a realistic setting is the special world and the hero's journey instead of a fantastical one, Kiki captures a childlike sense of wonder that's not common in movies. Kiki is amazed by this town, so you can't help but be kind of swept up in her enthusiasm, no pun intended. And Jiji's cynicism makes for the perfect foil for Kiki's excitement.
Look, up ahead. And this would be interesting because it's a city floating on waves. Isn't it wonderful? It's alright, I guess. There are so many beautiful buildings. There are a lot of buildings, yes.
And the world of Kiki's delivery service is beautiful. The scenic, vaguely European town that serves as a backdrop, which was based on Stockholm and Visby in Sweden, is so relaxing and warm. According to Helen McCarthy, author of the erotic anime movie guide, wait, what? The vibrant, Stockholm-inspired city gives a sense of safety as well as independence. So, yeah, there you go. It's definitely the one place in a movie I'd most like to go. Guess I gotta start working on my Swedish. An ingefära är på väg. And besides that, apart from the sudden introduction of a crashing Zeppelin in the last 10 minutes, the ups and downs of this movie are on a pleasingly small scale, but that in no way means it's boring. Again, it just goes to show how good Ghibli is at telling stories that it doesn't need to be as grand and epic as Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke to be entertaining. They made a movie about a girl who delivers bread, bakes a fish pie with some old ladies, rides a bike that can, like, almost fly, I guess. Loses the motivation to deliver bread and goes and chills with this tomboy painter lady. Looks at shoes in a window and buys groceries. And I am fixated for 100% of that runtime. I don't know exactly why. Maybe I just love to watch these characters. Maybe it's the setting, maybe it's both, maybe it's neither. Miyazaki is just that good that he can pull me into a story this quiet. I think what it might be is that I love this world so much, and because the movie is so slow, I can take the time to appreciate it. I can really feel the ins and outs of this world and understand what it's like to be there. To bring it back to Star Wars, that's probably why I liked the games more than the movies. In the games, I could explore the worlds at my own pace, while the movies were too fast for me to get to know the places beyond, this is the one with sand, this is the one with snow, this is the one that's literally just some forest, and this one's just a swamp with a bunch of snakes in it. What I'm trying to say is the pace of Kiki's Delivery Service is ideal for appreciating the world that the movie builds and becoming immersed in it. And then the Zeppelin comes crashing down and I'm like, no, this is my home! So basically, I love Kiki's Delivery Service. I watched it a bunch of times as a kid and I never forgot it. I bought the art book and the Jiji plushie and I put it near the top of my favorite movie list. But something happened in 2013. I rewatched the movie for the first time in years. This was an important moment for me. I was 13. I was an adult now. This was the first time I'd be watching it all grown up. So I watched it, and something was off. Something was wrong. I'm not going to pretend I noticed it, because I know I didn't, but I also know I didn't enjoy it as much. It felt empty. I thought I'd just grown out of it, that it didn't hold up, and that was so disappointing. I genuinely thought I didn't like my favorite movie anymore. And then I found the truth. There are 2 versions of Kiki's Delivery Service.
We have just lost cabin pressure.
Well, okay, I guess if you count the original Japanese, that's 3. 3 versions of Kiki's Delivery Service. Right, but there's also that alternate English dub they made for Japanese Airlines and the Laserdisc version. That's 4. 4 versions of Kiki's Delivery Service. Well, there's also the live-action version. So the version I was watching when I was 13, the only version Disney has made available since 2010, was not the same as the version I'd watched all my childhood. That was quite a bombshell when I found out. So, what had they changed? Well, first, they took out Sidney Forrest's original songs, Soaring and I'm Gonna Fly, from the beginning and ending of the movie, and put back in the songs from the Japanese version. And those original songs are fine, I guess. Sounds a bit like something out of a 60s Godzilla movie, but they're enjoyable. But any day of the week, I'd rather be soaring all alone and on my own. I'm soaring. By the way, fun fact, on Sidney Forrest's Wikipedia article, Studio Ghibli is referred to as Ghibli Studio. That just sounds all kinds of wrong. Then they took out the extra bits of soundtrack that had been composed by Paul Chihara for the first release of the English dub. Some of these pieces were for scenes that were silent in the original Japanese version, but it seems like there were a few moments where bits of Hisaishi's score were replaced. And I can see why some people would take issue with that, since Hisaishi is a legendary composer. But I kind of prefer the tone that Chihara's bits have. In the new version of the dub, they also removed what Wikipedia describes as lavish sound effects. As someone who's watched the first release of the dub several times, I could not name any sound effect that felt out of place in this movie, so rest assured the additions weren't Looney Tunes stingers or drum rolls.
On the contrary, it seems to me that they were just natural sound design choices that, once they were taken back out again, left quite a gap in the soundtrack.
One other tiny thing they changed is apparently they didn't like how the sound, it was how it was good. They wanted it to not be good. They decided to change it so that it would no longer be good, because that would be better, obviously.
Ta-da! Ta-da! Here we go! Whee! Here we go! Whee!
But I'm beating around the bush, because there's one other major change, one that hurts my soul, a change that, given the circumstances, I can't even believe they made. So, the first release of the Disney dub took some liberties with the character of Jiji. More specifically, Phil Hartman took some liberties. He made the character more quippy and sarcastic, which was exactly what I loved so much about him. And having his background in SNL, Hartman did a fair deal of ad-libbing in the recording studio, a lot of which made it into the movie. So if in the original scene there's no talking, and all you see are the backs of Kiki and Gigi's heads, Hartman would add a line here and there.
Whoa, whoa, don't panic! Kiki, that's a very small space! Whoa! Okay, nice landing.
He even, controversially, added a line at the very end.
In the original, Kiki stops being able to talk to Jiji, but in the dub, the loss of communication is temporary. While I can see how people would dislike this change, especially when Miyazaki has explained the intention of not having Jiji talk at the end, I wouldn't have it any other way. It would have broken my little heart if Kiki never heard her bratty friend talk again.
But let's take a step back and think about how Jiji talking at the end affects Kiki's character arc. At the beginning, Kiki is the naive, excited one, and Jiji is the cynical, sarcastic one. Then as the movie goes on, Kiki becomes more used to her new home. Then she stops being able to talk to Jiji, I think because she's at a point where she doesn't need any cynicism to balance out her enthusiasm. This is also the point in the movie where she loses her magic, and she's unable to fly anymore. With her excitement, she's also lost her motivation, and when she gets back at the end, when she flies again and saves Tombo, there's two paths you could take. Maybe Jiji doesn't talk because she's found motivation from something other than simply being excited to be a part of this new world she's found. Maybe Jiji does talk because she's happy again and she's found her enthusiasm, and Jiji steps right back in to bring back balance. I don't think either one of these options is a bad way to end the story or the character arc. I could probably go either way.
And all this is where the personality of the dub shines. It's where it really becomes its own movie, its own unique experience. It's different to the original, but that's a strength, not a weakness. And what makes it all the more bittersweet is that this was one of Hartman's last performances, released posthumously after his wife killed him and then committed suicide. When the dub was released, it was dedicated to his memory. So then in 2010, Disney took out all the added lines, including Jiji talking at the end, all in the name of being closer to the original Japanese version.
Look, up ahead. And this would be interesting because it's a city floating on waves. Isn't it wonderful? It's alright, I guess. How lovely. Look, up ahead. How lovely. What are we gonna do? We can't stay up. Hold on. Oh. Alright, first, don't panic. Second, don't panic. And third, did I mention not to panic? Hold on tight. Oh. Kiki, that opening is extremely small. Yeah. Nice landing. What are we gonna do? We can't stay up. Hold on. Oh.
By doing this, they made the movie feel empty and weird, like Kiki is talking to herself instead of Jiji. And what I was saying about Jiji being Kiki's foil isn't completely gone, but it's now relegated to the bare minimum interactions left in the movie. But hey, it's closer to the original that way. Maybe it's the better way to watch it. And I would agree that maybe it is, if Disney had actually given the choice between which version to watch, but they didn't. They took out the added lines and music, re-released the DVD, and that was it. They didn't keep the old version available in any form, they didn't explain themselves, they didn't make any excuse for cutting out the lines that made me love the movie from the tragically murdered actor that they dedicated the dub to. They just quietly swapped my baby for one that at a first glance is the same baby, but once you stop to inspect it, you realize it doesn't say as much, and it sings in Japanese, and its voice is all bit-crushed and annoying. So, you know what I had to do. I bought the old version of the dub on DVD, which I found on Amazon. It wasn't cheap, but I needed to see it again, and sure enough, when it came in the mail, I watched it, and after an introduction from John Lasseter, which is less thrilling now than it once was, I could properly enjoy it again.
It didn't feel empty anymore. Phil Hartman's lines were right there where they were supposed to be, and I can finally sing along again to Soaring! Is this the better version of the dub? I don't know. I'm gonna be honest, there's no way I could be any more biased about this. Some people might prefer not to have the extra dialogue. I'm sure a lot of people are bothered that some of Joe Hisaishi's soundtrack is replaced with new pieces by Paul Chihara. But here's the thing. If you didn't like that stuff in the first release, you always still had the option to switch to Japanese audio with subtitles. But the first release of the dub isn't being preserved. I'm sure it wouldn't be very hard for Disney to add the option to switch between which version of the dub you want to listen to, but they haven't. I understand that they want to preserve the work that Miyazaki did or Hisaishi did as best as possible, but in doing so they've left the work that Phil Hartman, Paul Chihara, and Sidney Forrest did to languish in obscurity. And maybe that doesn't mean a lot to everyone, but this, not this or this, was my favorite movie. So it means a hell of a lot to me.